Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode number 3 of the Fullstack MyJournal series of videos on this channel here. I hope you're doing well. If you haven't watched the first 2 videos, make sure to check those videos out using the links in the description below. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to render out the post objects that we created in the last couple of lessons. We want to render them out in HTML format, kind of like what we have right here. So we have a post that has a title, the post body right here, and this guy has an image URL. I think we'll fix that later on. And down here we have another post object. Now, last lesson, I kind of mentioned that I wanted to show you how to render this out in iOS format like this, but I think it makes a little more sense to actually draw this out in HTML first, and then maybe the next lesson we'll move on to the iOS component. Okay, so hopefully that sounds good. Why don't we revisit our project on the left side in Visual Studio Code, an awesome IDE. What I have currently open is the routes.js file. If I refresh this application right now, it says that I don't have anything kind of showing up there. So why don't I start my application on 1337, and now these are all of the lovely post objects that I have previously created. So 111, second title, and a nice video. Okay, now the first thing I want to do is to introduce a new route inside of my routes file, routes.js, and this route will be a GET request. I'm going to say /home, and the home route is going to load from a particular file instead of this post controller guy. So what exactly do I mean? Well, if you open up your project right here and you look at post controller, this file is growing really crazy, right? There's a lot of functions in here and it gets a little hard to maintain. So what I'm going to do instead of introducing more code here is to just say a new folder. This guy will be called post, and inside of here we are going to create a new file and call it home.js. This guy, let's say module.exports equals my actual route. So I'm going to say request and res and just say console.log this. So this route shows home page of post. Okay, why don't we also end this request as well? So res.end. Okay, this looks good. I'm going to save my project, and we have an error down here. For the actual home endpoint, we are going to load it from the, let's see, post/home, just like so. Save all my files, and everything should be up and running. We are missing a comma here. Why don't I remove that comment as well and save, and we are good to go here. Let me refresh the post routes. We're loading our beautiful post objects just like so. Why don't I go /home instead? And you see that we are showing the log message of this route shows a home page of post. Okay, so going back into home.js, it's actually printing out this line right here. I actually prefer using this format for my endpoints because I don't want to overload this file with all of this code, which is currently what you're seeing. So I'm going to be working from home.js pretty much for the rest of today's lesson, hopefully. Okay, what exactly goes inside of here? Well, you can do whatever you want, and the first thing I want to show you how to render out is an HTML file that looks something like this, right? It's not going to look exactly like this, but we're going to render out a simple version. So the way to create an HTML page inside of sales MVC is really simple as well. Let me close out the config. There's a directory in sales called views, and there's a page right here. Homepage.ejs is pretty much what you get at the root. So if you go to root, this is a brand new app. It's somewhere up here. So it says brand new app somewhere inside of here. So get your bearings. Right here is this guy right here. So instead of using homepage EJS, we can load a different page. Let me create a new file. Let me call this home.ejs. So don't get this confused with homepage. This is a brand new file. Let's see, HTML body, and inside of here, this will show a list of our posts like so. Okay, I won't be going over exactly how to type HTML. This stuff should be pretty self-explanatory. You can Google search how to type out this bit of code. It's pretty easy. Just look at it and you should be able to understand it fairly quickly. For my home.ejs, I'm going to go inside of my actual route. So this is the route here. Instead of using res.end, we can use something called res.view. And for the view, you just want to use the string of, I believe it is pages and home, like so. So let me see, I'm gonna save this and let's see, reload the project using the home endpoint now. So home, and you see that it's not able to render this stuff out. I don't think I need the pages right here or the slash before the pages, so make sure to fix that. And once you have this bit of code in here, it's going to load from the pages directory right here, and then the actual home EJS file. If you don't know exactly what EJS is, it's basically a format of JavaScript that allows you to load some objects inside of your page dynamically. And so what exactly do I mean by that? Well, I'm going to load my post objects inside of here now. And so what exactly do I mean? Well, I'm going to use a div, and this div will contain the, let's see, my div right here. Let me just write out some code. So 2 divs, and this will be the post title, and then this will be the post body. Okay, let me save this and refresh the browser right here. And so I have my post title and my post body, and what I really want to show is, let's see, post right here. Try to load this up. I want to see 111, 222, and then for the second post I want to see that, and the third I want to see that below the second. So how do I do that? Well, the first thing you need to do is to go back to your home.js file. Let me just remove that comment, makes this code look a little cleaner. And what you can do is, for this view right here, you can actually pass objects to the actual home page. And this will make a little bit more sense once you see the code. But basically, I want to pass in some kind of object like, let's see, post like this, or maybe all posts, something like that, right? So I think I need to wrap this guy in some kind of brace like that. Let me try to save, and this should be okay. So instead of, let's see, passing all posts just like so, I actually need to create it first. And the way I'm going to create this all post object is use const all posts and equal to something. And I want to use some async syntax right here. So I want to use await and let's say post.find. And this guy is just going to find all my post objects and pretty much load up this entire array. And then this guy is actually going to pass this post object into this home page here. So hopefully I have the syntax correctly. Let's see, what else do I need? If I try to save right here, every time you have an await instead of a function, you have to make sure that the overall function that's wrapping it is going to be asynchronous like that. Otherwise you get this error. So let me hit save again, and this function should be okay. So I'm going to refresh this home page again. So refresh like that, and you see it looks exactly the same. What I am going to do now is I am going to use this object called all posts instead of home EJS right here. And the way I'm going to actually use it is I'm going to iterate through this entire object inside of here. Let me just show you some of the syntax, and hopefully I can type it out correctly. So the syntax looks like this. So lesser than sign and percent, and inside of this code you can say all posts and just say for each like this. So for each, make sure to type this out correctly. The for each function expects you to pass in a parameter that is a closure or some kind of function. So I'm going to use the fat arrow syntax of that, and brace like so. And so inside of here you can print out whatever you want. And to make it a little bit easier to read, I'm going to type out this syntax over here. I'm going to close off this little opening percentage tag right here, and then I will create another tag down here and say percent greater than like so. All right, so inside of this loop, I'm going to execute this a couple of different times. So just say that, and I'm going to just paste, or save rather, and refresh my page like so. So what exactly is happening, right? We see that we have 3 versions of this div right here. So the post title and post body. The last thing I need to do is to make sure that this is actually showing the content right here for the title, and the body as well. So this syntax is a little bit confusing, and I think it's really hard to read, but once you get used to it, it should be fairly straightforward. Instead of here, I'm going to replace the post title with this. So I'm going to say less than, so let's see, less than percentage equals and p dot title and percent like so. Make sure that every time you open one of these less than percentages, you actually have to close it off like that. And let me hit the save, refresh, and now you see 111, second title, and a nice video. This guy, let's replace the body as well, and let me just paste this in here, and this guy will be a body like that. Okay, refresh this one more time, and now you see that this is the title, body, title, body, title, and body. Again, you're going to have to Google search some EJS syntax to fully understand what's capable and what's possible with this bit of code here. So again, this is EJS, and this is just the code that allows you to loop through a particular object. All post again is coming from your home.js route. So home.js route, this is the all post like that. Okay, so that's a brief lesson as to how you print out objects inside of your HTML file. The last thing we might want to do is to introduce some styling. So I'm going to do some very quick styling to make this look a little bit better. And let's say background color of black. So there's that. This entire thing will become black. You can just hover over this and use this little thing right here. Refresh that. It looks a little bit grayer and a lot nicer. Next thing I might want to do is for each one of these post objects here, maybe I want to introduce a white background just to differentiate each post. So the way I'm going to do that is to wrap all this inside of another div. So cut that, paste that. These divs don't really do anything, so refresh looks exactly the same. And I'm going to apply some CSS styling. So let's say style and background color of white, and so that looks good. So I'm going to paste that in here. And that's kind of what it looks like. You can also introduce some margins. So margin, and let's say 16 pixels, and let's just refresh right here. And that's kind of what it looks like. If you want to clean up the styling a little bit more, you want to introduce some style tags like this as style. And let's just say dot post container, and this will be that. I'm going to copy the style over here and paste that in here. So this is just some standard CSS styling, and I don't exactly want to go over how this is done. You kind of have to Google search how to do this instead of the style right here, the blank style. Let's replace this with class and say post container like so. All right, so now all my posts will have this particular styling with a padding of 16 and a margin of 16, and it looks a lot nicer. Last thing I might want to do is maybe I want to round this off as well. So border radius and maybe 5 pixels like that. Refresh, and pretty much looks like that. And maybe if you want to introduce some border, so border, I think you can say solid and 1 pixel and black maybe. Hit the save and you get this black border. Obviously you can configure the styling to be whatever you want. This is just a brief styling that I'll use for now. So let's make this a little bit darker. It looks kind of like that. Okay, so with this in play for all of our post objects, the next thing I would like to do is to show you how to actually create posts inside of HTML. So in the previous lesson, what I went through was to use Postman. And so inside of Postman, we are setting a post object to the post endpoint like this. So a post request to /post, and we are setting the title and this post body parameter every time we create this. So let's see number 4 and number 5, hit the send right here. We are creating a new post object. If I refresh, we have 4 and 5. So instead of using Postman, right, we obviously want to maybe create the post object inside of HTML instead. So let's see how this is done. I'm going to do this rather quickly, and it's going to look a little bit crude. So let's see what it looks like first. I'm going to introduce a form right here. And just to make things quicker, I'm going to use the post container style as well. Maybe you want to change that later, but let's see that. So here's my form up here. And I'm going to say div and create post. So just save, refresh. This is a pretty normal process. HTML is really quick compared to iOS and Android. That's kind of why I like creating web pages myself. I'm going to use an input, and type is text. So text like that. And let's see, a placeholder, and this will be the post title. And close that off, hit the refresh here. We have the post title right here. Let me create another input. So this will be input, and this will be the post body. And let's see, I think I also want to use a button down here, button and type and submit. So this is pretty standard code for, let's see, submit like that. So if you look up a form and how to create them inside of HTML, you will pretty much get this bit of syntax here. This is pretty standard. And let me just hit save one more time. And now we have our post body. So that and that, hit the submit. And you see nothing really happens, right? It just wipes out the content in here. What I want to do is every time I hit the submit button, I want to reload this entire page with a new post object somewhere down below here. So how exactly do I do that? Well, this is pretty easy if you just go inside of the form. And there's another tag on here called action, and this will send your request to whatever is defined inside of the action. So /post is my actual endpoint, and the method is actually post, like so. Okay, so that's all I want to do for now. Let me hit the refresh to reload this HTML page. I am going to say, let's see, RRR and TTT. Hit the submit here. It's going to try to load this inside of some kind of object here. And so essentially what it's doing is every time you hit this submit button here, it's going to hit the /post, the endpoint right here, using a post method because that's what you defined. And it's going to try to create a new post record. But you see it says that we have invalid new record, missing value of title. It expected a string but got undefined. So let's kind of walk back a little bit into post controller. Whenever you create a post, right, this is the actual endpoint. You grab the post from the actual request body title, and you grab the post body from body post body. And how you actually pass these objects into the actual, post request using this submit button is if you go back to your home.ejs file, for the two inputs right here, all you have to do is say name, and this guy is the title. And then for the input right here, I believe I called it post body. So that's what I will use. Hit the save, refresh, and let's say QQQQ, www, hit the submit. And this guy actually creates that post object. Now, because it's HTML, it's going to land in this empty page. I'll show you how to fix this in just a moment, maybe. So let me just hit the back right here, refresh, and here is my new post object here. I'll show you that again by typing in some garbage here. And let's go back and refresh, and this is the garbage new post, just like that. If you want to redirect the user after you create your post, you can do that by going inside of your creation endpoint here. And whenever you finish creating the object, you can actually say res.redirect and redirect them to anywhere you want. I'm just going to redirect them to the home page like that. So let me hit the save, wait for the refresh. And let's say AAA and BBBB, hit the submit. It's going to redirect, and it's going to reload this entire page with that new request. Again, some of this stuff you just kind of have to get used to doing, and you have to see what's possible by looking at source code. I know I dug around for quite some time to figure out how all this is actually coded. Okay, so that's pretty much how we show our post objects inside of HTML. Last thing I would like to kind of demonstrate in today's lesson before I let you go is how exactly do we delete these post objects from HTML, right? So for example, let's go back to the finished project here. We want to hit the delete and somehow delete this post. So let me just hit cancel. And whenever you delete it, you would expect this guy to go away. Let me go back to home EJS and let me show you how to create a delete button somewhere inside of here. So let's say button right here and just say delete. Hit the save, reload, and now we have this nice little delete button. So if you click on this, it doesn't exactly do anything. So why don't we write out some custom code to delete a post object? I'll show you how this is done by going into the button. And let's say on click, and this guy will be handle delete post, so post, and let me just copy this. I will now define this function inside of my HTML file. And so how exactly is this done, you might be asking? Well, it's pretty easy. So inside of HTML, you can declare a script block like that, declare a function, and just say handle delete post, and just say console.log and deleting post ... hit the save and reload. And inside of Chrome browser, you can open up the developer tool. So I'm going to say Command Option and J. You can do that in the menu as well, but that's the shortcut. I know how to actually launch this guy down here. And so I'm going to hit this delete button, and you can see it deleting posts. You can hit this a couple of times. Basically, it is going to print out this line of code on 15. So instead of just doing that, why don't we send a delete request to the server? Remember, in the last lesson, we have a route declared that actually deletes our post object using this guy. And we are grabbing the post ID from the actual request and then destroying it using this line of code. So how exactly do we do that? Well, the way we actually send this request, let me just remind you in Postman. So let's see, we are here. So inside of Postman, we are sending a delete request like this, and this will pretty much delete our object. So I'm going to replicate this instead of HTML. And the way I'm going to do this is to go inside of this bit of code, and let's go to EJS. And let's see, whenever I'm trying to delete something, I'm going to set an ID on this button. So the ID is going to be, let's see, percentage and p.id, and close this guy off. So basically, every time I'm looping through all my post objects, I'm going to assign this button with the post.id. And the post ID is going to look something like this. So we have 3, 4, and 5, and now we have 7, 8, and 10. And let's see, the way I'm going to get a handle on this ID is I'm going to pass this little event object right here. So event, and basically every time I click this delete button here, and we're going to pass an event into this right here. So you can imagine the event. And what I'll do is I'll also say console.log, and this guy will be e.target.id, and I'll hit the save right here, refresh, and you see delete, and you see that e is not defined. Maybe I'll just rename that to e. It looks a little bit nicer, and hit delete, and you can see it looks that and that. So it looks like we are not getting the post ID. Inside of this bit of syntax, you want to make sure to use the equal sign like so. I always forget to do that, and my code doesn't work the very first couple of times. So now you see I'm trying to delete the post with the 4, and the last one has the ID of 10. Okay, so that's how we kind of get going. And how exactly do we want to execute a little delete request inside of our code? Well, what you can do is you can download something called Axios, so Axios JavaScript. And let's see, how exactly do we want to load this guy? Let me just search for that. And how do you actually load this inside of your code? Well, I'm going to use the CDN that looks like this. So just copy this. Once you do this a couple of times, you'll realize it's really easy. So just paste that in your code. This is going to download this script called Axios. And it's basically a library that makes executing get and post and delete requests really, really easy. Let me just close out of this. We don't really want to see that anymore. What I'm going to do now that I have Axios available is I'm going to execute a delete request by doing this. You can say await an Axios.delete, and you just want to pass it some kind of URL. So this URL, let me just say URL equals the, let's see, the post URL like that. And I'm going to try to hit save now. And there's some bugs right here I can see already. But basically, I'm going to reload my page, hit the delete. You'll see that handle delete post is not defined. So what exactly is going on here? I think I want to maybe remove this guy. Let me just remove that and hit the refresh here and hit delete. So handle delete post is not defined. Why is it doing that? Well, whenever you use await syntax like that, I believe you want to use async in front of your function. Otherwise, you'll get this little strange error. So hit the delete, and Axios is not defined. So let's bring this guy back, and I'm going to refresh one more time. And let's try to delete this guy right here. You'll see that request failed with 404, and you are actually hitting your server down here. So let me hit this button a couple of times, and you'll see that every time I hit it, it is trying to execute a delete request on the actual URL post. And the reason why it's kind of hitting a 404 undefined is because this route right here, the delete route, actually requires you to pass in the actual post ID. So I'm going to say post ID, and const post ID is e.target.id. Okay, so I'm going to hit the save. Finally, I'm going to refresh this one more time. and everything looks good. Let me try to delete this guy right here. So delete, you'll see that this actually deleted with a post of ID 200, and if I refresh this guy will be gone because we deleted that object. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. If you want to reload after the delete is done, you can just say location.reload. That's just HTML code, or JavaScript code rather. So let me just refresh this. And for the last post, or maybe this one right here, second title, let me delete that. Refreshes, delete, and delete. And that's pretty much how a delete is coded out. Sometimes this guy is going to actually run into an error. So, you know, you can imagine maybe the server is down, or maybe the delete didn't complete, right? So what we can do is you can execute a try before all this and just say that and catch the potential error, and console.error, so error, and let's say error.toString, something like that. You can also say alert.error.toString, do something like that as well. And let's see, this looks okay. If you are expecting some kind of response from your request, you can say const and response equals that. And so you can also say console.log and, you know, log out your response or whatever you want to do with it. Let me try to hit the refresh now. It's going to delete. I believe it's going to be successful, so everything looks normal. So let me create another post here and create that, delete. So that is looking pretty solid. Let me show you what the error case looks like by, you know, killing off my server with Control-C. So my server is no longer up. If you hit this delete button right here, it says network error, and I believe you can also see it in the console as well. So error connection refused. So bringing back my server one more time with nodemon, wait for it to load and create 111.222, create that and delete that. Everything looks pretty solid, and we now have completed how to create a request, how to create a post rather, and then how to delete it. I'll leave it up to you on how you want to implement the update feature of this particular API, but it should be pretty easy. Hopefully you have some success. Alrighty everybody, that's gonna wrap it up for today's lesson. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully you learned how to create some HTML pages, how to pass objects from your server to the HTML page, and how to render out everything so that you can create and delete objects all at the same time. If you want to learn a little bit more about full stack coding, make sure to check out the Full Stack social course using the link in the description below. That's gonna be it for today. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye guys.